So odd. Anyway, what are you gonna do? Well, let's get rolling here, everybody. We've got 8 whiskeys to get through. Got quite a lineup. There was a lot of interest, it is fair to say, in tonight's tasting. 2 Bruichladdich 18s, one an OB, the other obviously an IB, and 6 Octomores. It is I think this has to be the peatiest tasting we've done in quite some time. Would that be a fair assessment? Have we done a peatier tasting than this in the recent past? I don't think so either.
Yeah, I think it might have been COVID when we did like a Octomore heavy tasting.
But even then, I don't think we would have done 6, or did we?
Yeah.
Because I think this is the first time that I can remember where we've actually had 6 Octomores available at the same time, uh, by chance of fate or cycles of demand.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, it's kind of a nice opportunity to do this. Truth be told, we tucked away the Bruichladdich 18 back when we still had some. Before we get rolling, some quick propaganda, some new events we've got coming up. Obviously, first and foremost, if you're in Calgary, I hope you're planning to attend the MS Calgary Whiskey Festival Thursday night. There's still tickets available, including some master classes. After that, next week, we just squeezed this tasting in. We've got the new sales export manager from Amrut, Neelish Saran, coming to town. We're gonna have an Amrut tasting in store. Our Burns Bash is coming up next Thursday. Is it Thursday or Friday? Thursday, right?
Thursday.
Thursday. So $50. There'll be almost 100 whiskeys open for tasting. Great little event. And then I'm just going to scroll down because we've opened up some new ones. You've probably seen Harmony's got a whiskey and chocolate tasting just for Valentine's Day. We have added a Macallan tasting because why not? This will be a no holds barred, gloves off Macallan tasting. So it's something to keep an eye on. Edredar, we've got an Edredar to the extreme tasting, like a baller lineup of Edredar whiskeys, including the new 25-year-old, which I've done a tasting note on. It's fantastic. There's the Lassie's Fest. There's the Sponge is Dead, the final whiskey sponge tasting we will probably ever do at Kensington Wine Market, including the last 6 releases of Whiskey Sponge and a couple of others for fun. There's a St. Patrick's Day tasting, and then Whiskeyland, which is the new Whiskey Sponge, I think, which will also only go to, I believe, 100 releases. And then Angus will have to come up with some other clever idea. There's a 100 proof tasting in store, and Symington's Choice. This one I'm pretty excited about too, because we've got some cool releases in it. I don't want to waste any more time on that, but in case you didn't see them in the newsletter the other day, that's what's coming up in the not too distant future. Anything else, guys, that I need to mention before we roll into some laddies?
I don't
Yeah,
think so.
think that covers it.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's dig in. Let's start off. So we're starting off tonight with the Rest and Be Bruichladdich 18 because it is straight bourbon. The OB 18, Evan has informed me, has some wine cask in it. So we're going to go naked old Bruichladdich first, followed by Bruichladdich with a little tweaking. So this is part of the Rest and Be range. It's a single cask strength, an ex-bourbon barrel, 18 years, filled in 2004, cask number 1434, 53.2%. I can't recall for sure, but I think, yeah, it says exclusive here. We've still got some. I'm not sure how much we've got, but I don't think it's a lot. But guys, I'm surprised we have not done a tasting note for this one yet.
Yeah, I think you had planned on doing one because I had to go in and delete. It said Andrew's tasting note and then just had blank, like nose, palate, finish comment with nothing there.
I hope I didn't put it into like a newsletter and then just forgot to also put it on the web, which is within the realm of possibilities.
Maybe I'll have
But,
to scan that.
man, this is so creamy.
Okay, good. I didn't we changed the lineup tonight, guys, but we didn't change the first 2 bottles. I assumed I had it right and it was wrong. I've had this bottle, it's awesome, and I remember it's kind of like farmy creaminess with also a
Mhm.
hint of sweetness. So when I picked it up, I was confident I was right, but then I was scared I was wrong until Andrew said creamy.
The farmy note is definitely there. It's also
Yeah.
got that nice sort of cheesy funk that we love to get on
Mhm.
Bruichladdich and some nice like
Smoked
citrus.
Gouda. Yeah.
Gouda, yeah,
Gouda.
yeah. Some nice kind of melon notes underneath it all.
A little bit of salted caramel ice cream too on the nose.
Mm.
Yeah, a little bit of like a salty goat cheese almost on the palate as well, but it's so soft and creamy
It is so
at
soft, it's so creamy,
53.2.
it's lush. It's probably barrel char, but I get like a faint whiff of smoke
Mhm.
coming on the palate. It's a little charred, like and it's starting to go tropical. Like there's this like grilled pineapple note on the palate to add to some of those citrus fruits, bit of apricot. But yeah, it's starting to go a little on the tropical side, which is, I guess, kind of what I would have hoped.
Hmm. On the nose as well, there's just like a faint hint at the end of like a salted like pepperoni.
Mhm.
I
It's
like
so
it.
salty. The malt's there, that funk is there. The cheese is like an aged Gouda. There's this like
Yeah.
kind of where you know those ones where they get sold, they've got those like protein crystals that almost come across as
Yeah.
like salt.
Yeah.
They're not salt, but they come across as being like almost like salty.
Hmm.
Um, so Rest and Be is a reference to a place on the A83. It's an independent bottler. The origins of it go back to the military road built to fight the Jacobite rebellion on the west coast of Scotland. Uh, and yeah, I think the guys who started this, they had represented Bruichladdich before it was bought by Remy Cointreau. And I believe they had access to stocks because of that. They're French guys, nice guys. They're also into rum. And I don't know, presumably bought casks owned by employees or former owners, guys like Jim McEwen or Mark Renier, because there was a tie-in to Waterford in terms of distribution. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of these things are kind of intertwined. But uh, it's always funny when I see them because they look very Scottish and then they talk with a thick French accent. But nice guys. We've had some great rums from them too.
Hmm.
But a lot of cool Bruichladdich. And some of the wine casts we even liked,
Yeah.
which is a bit of an oddity.
Well, and we also had, if you had the whiskey calendar this year from us, or the not a whiskey calendar from us, there was a 14-year-old Port Charlotte, uh, ex-bourbon single cask Rest and Be in there. That was fantastic as well.
Mhm,
Definitely kept up with the cheesy notes that we're getting on this one, but with more smoke and peat. And
mhm.
I believe there's also, they made reference, and I don't think they knew it at the time, but there just so happens to be a Rest and Be Thankful named spot in Jamaica, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think you're right. There is a reference on their site to that as well. It looks a lot more tropical than the place in Scotland. I can actually just throw this up here. If you've ever driven to Campbellton or like to the ferry to Isla before in Scotland, you'll almost certainly have gone up this route here. It's a beautiful drive. I have yet to see snow on those mountains, so there's some timing on that, although it's usually just pouring rain. Um, but this is a nice Bruichladdich to get started on, and lots of nice layers to it. It's creamy, it's fresh, it's rich. It's got a little bit of funk. It's starting to go tropical. Like I would love to see what this would have looked like in another 5 to 8 years, but
Yeah,
pretty good right now.
it's really good. This is had my name on it for a while. I
Mhm.
love it.
No. Uh, let's go on to the OB, the Bruichladdich 18-year-old official bottling. Uh, we've been lucky to get a couple of shipments of this, but man, they've all sold out. It's been a bit of a hot potato, in part because I think this is the oldest non-black art age statement whiskey that we've seen from Bruichladdich in a long time, with the exception of the 30-year-old, which is priced a little on the high side. And what do they tell us here? Primarily ex-bourbon, but also Sauterne and port casks. And for those who don't know, Sauterne is a sweet wine from Bordeaux, and port casks are obviously probably ruby port pipe casks from Portugal. But I think I tried this, but I have not had a chance to sit down and give it a proper nosing and tasting yet, because we don't have any left. We've sold it one per person up until this point in time. Demand has been high. What do we think about this?
I think that to go on the black arts that you were talking about, I think this is probably the oldest official bottling from Bruichladdich Distillery since they revived in 2001. Because everything else that they've bottled post that time for older stock has been from older stock from before they revived.
And unless you're talking Whiskey Sponge, Bruichladdich, and some of those other things, but you're right, it's the
Official
oldest
bottlings.
official.
Yeah.
You're right. I don't think I've seen and we've not seen any. And the 30-year-old that's out right now is not post opening stock. It's all pre-closure stock that they would have acquired from probably White Mackay.
There's a little bit of minerality coming through for me on the nose. It's a little bit more tightly wound versus the farminess that we got on the Rest and Bee. And there's a bit of like a lemon balm or like the Hotel Verbena soap. The citrus smelling soap that you get there. That's kind of a combination of like lemons and weed.
Is it verbena or verbena?
Verbena, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
how do you
palate
go?
for me it's very tropical, very chalky and mineral and salty, just like the nose leads you. I'm surprised at how much citrus and lemon there is on it for me right now. Yeah. And the cheese is quite mild. Like it's definitely still there. There's like an old age cheddar, but it's not as like funky as the first one.
The nose, is like you said, Evan, I think it's a bit more closed, still very malty, more of that salted caramel. It's creamy. The palate, you can see that little trace of wine cask, whether it's the Sauterne or the port coming through. It's not quite as lush or I don't know. It doesn't feel even the palate feels a little bit more closed than that Rest and Bee bottling.
Yeah. There's that chalkiness, and there's almost like a flinty smoke on the palate. Like it reminds me of Chablis in a manner because of that, along with the citrus.
It really does have either a fair bit of barrel char or smoke leading into the finish. Like there's quite a charred note. Rather than like charred pineapple, to me, this is more like charred lemons. Like if they're putting lemons on the grill along with the fish and charring them, it's like the skin of the lemons getting charred. There's a nice sweetness to it and some spice. I think you're seeing a little bit of chocolate coming from that port cask and a bit of sweet spice like ginger, cinnamon, nutmeg coming from the Sauterne cask, which I presume is French oak. Or would it be American oak? Probably American oak. The wineries probably prefer American oak, come to think of it.
Sauternes probably going
well,
into
for
French.
Sauternes maybe because it doesn't age very long. But if you're doing something that is meant for aging, you're going to use French.
It's an interesting question. I never really thought about that, but with some wine casks, it's definitely French oak. But then you also know that like there are wineries that reference using American oak, and it's because they like that cleaner, more buttery, less spicy profile, whereas French oak tends to be quite a bit more crisp. Interesting. Well, that's something we probably need to delve into at some point here.
It's actually does decently with just a couple drops of water. It gets a little bit of that flintiness goes to the nose, and then the chalkiness goes to the palate, but
Does it make it more
holds
dry?
together. No, well, maybe a touch, but like doesn't get overly spicy or bring out any more on the spice side of things. Just gets a little bit a little bit more soft orchard fruits coming through on the palate.
I didn't
Yeah.
science either of mine yet, so I'm gonna do that now.
Yeah.
Add a little bit of water to them, see how they make out. Early favorites for you guys between these two?
Yeah. That's still the rested bee for me. I love it.
Oh,
Yeah, the rest and B is so far so much more expressive. I think there's maybe a bit more complexity showing on the OB18 with the amount of cows that they're used, but it's hard to, at least at this point, sort of like pull out all the notes that are in there.
it's definitely got a bolder oak profile. Um, there's something, yeah, there's something to be said about that rest and B one that's just so soft, and I think it's going more tropical than, even with a drop of water than the OB is. But
The OB is way more tropical with water, I found. I did 2 drops, so maybe but
anyway, interesting
great.
experiment there. So shall we dig into some Octomore now?
Yeah.
We're going to the dark side here. So the idea, I think what we're going to do here is we're going to pit the 14-1 versus the 15-1, then the 14-2 versus 15-2, 14-3 and 15-3 together to do a couple of pairings. And part of the rationale behind that is that they've got a similar cask makeup. So it kind of makes sense to do them side by side. Phenol levels on the two of them, the 14.1 is what is it here, 100 or 128.9, 5 years first fill American Oak X bourbon and 59.6%. And the 15.1 is 108.2 parts per million, also 5 years, still first fill ex bourbon, but with some recharred ex bourbon in there as well. So it's not pure first fill, still 5 years of age, although some of it's a little older, 59.1. And I guess I could pop those up on screen. Interestingly, the price on the 15-1 came down a little bit, which I don't know if that's the producer realizing that maybe Octomore had gotten a little too dear and that they needed to sharpen their pencils a little bit. But there's the 14-1 for you. And the 15-1 look very similar except for this number here. Harmony and Evan, what do we think about these two?
Both of them have a lemon balm verbena thing going on for me. Maybe that's just where my head's at right now, is in the hotel room. I don't know, but
You're just looking forward to the weekend.
yeah. And I swear, and I've never smoked it in my life, but I swear I'm secondhand smoking some weed right now. Like there's
Oh.
someone's doing 420 around me.
That's
There's
Jeff.
the last time I got a marijuana note on whiskey, I think was from something from Springbank. I think it was a Springbank 18, and it was like pretty prominent.
Is that when you just kept calling it dank?
Yeah, it's so dank.
So dank.
So they have a similar nose in the sense that I'm getting this like honey and graham wafer, some big malty tones. You can see this like this kind of muddy, ashy peat creeping through on both of them. It's a little more vegetal, a little bit more like grassy on the 15-1 than the 14-1. But there's some similarities there. I think the 14-1 comes across a little more salty to me than the 15. But again, these are very, very similar makeups in terms of the profiles of the whiskeys and what was used to make them. I suppose there's a bit more of a creaminess and a little bit more vanilla on the 14 because of that like 100% first fill bourbon, but it's not that big a difference. It's not as big as I would have thought.
The 15-1 for me goes more into this. If you've had the Liberté cappuccino yogurt, I believe it is. It's got like the yogurt plus a bit of that coffee note in it, maybe coming from the charred oak casks.
That's some
the 15?
sugar.
Yeah, the 15.
Yeah, I can see that. The 14 to me is like spicy, like meaty, even has like a hint of fennel. I know we talked about like fennel and licorice earlier today, but I'm picking that up a little bit in the 14-1. Um, and yeah, like just lots of oats, lots of porridge and kind of oddities where the 15 is different.
There's the 14-1 for me also has a bit of a like a dill pickle almost into a relish note on the nose, like something a little bit sour.
Maybe a rye
Yeah.
cask.
Yeah.
Rye cask.
Yeah, I can see that. It's just, it feels more meaty to me and like has those barbecue notes than the 15.
Yeah. I mean, similar but different, like lots of citrus, lots of big lemon notes on both. Um, the 15-1 seems a bit more like decadent and rich, which maybe that's the recharred casks, and they're pulling like some really sweet like caramel, toffee, vanilla, like salted caramel tones from it. The 14-1 really seems a bit more malt forward, and juicy, but I don't know. I would have expected this one to be like a little more, the 14 to be a little more rich, given that it was all first fill ex bourbon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like a nice, for me, like a soft cinnamon and creamy finish on the 15. Yeah, I agree with you on the pine note on the 14. It's just more
It's
resin.
tiny and like the peat is pretty prominent. Like this is, I
Yeah.
would say it's string quite medicinal. Like it's getting very, very medicinal towards the finish.
Yeah, just totally ignored my notes on the 15 because I was drinking the 14 too on that one. I had not reorganized my lineup.
Oh,
Well, welcome back, Evan. What do you feel about this
Yeah.
lineup?
the 15 seems spicier too, like going into like some licorice tones, fennel, even a bit of clove. Whereas the 14 comes across a bit more medicinal. This to me is more tarry. It's like earthy and tarry.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an interesting comparison given that they're both like completely American oak. One of them's obviously recharred. They're big. You know, some people talking here about their palates being ruined by 6 Octomores, and we're only 2 deep. And to be totally honest with you, I'm not going to disagree with you on that. Like I've always loved these Octomores, but like I find um especially since they're all at cast strength, I find that they can be like a little rough, well, a lot rough and ready. 5 years old.
Mhm.
One of the funny things about Bruichladdich is their stills, although they're small, they're very tall and slender relative to their proportions, and they do run them fairly slowly. So you are going to get a lighter spirit, but I mean, we're talking about very, very young spirit here, 5 years of age, not having that much time for the angels to polish off the rougher edges of them. And yeah, this is just bourbon. We've not even introduced sherry or wine casks to this combo yet.
Mm. These are great though. I feel like they've changed a
Yeah.
lot just from when I poured them to now. And I mean, I kind of see why, because it's a lot of whiskey. It's a lot happening.
Yeah. Did you science them? Did you add a little water?
Haven't, I
I
will
did.
though.
I
That's
did.
fine.
The 14-1 especially goes more, it's like your tea bag fell in the manure before you steeped it.
That's funny. Oversteep tea was one of my initial thoughts
Mhm.
of 14-1 when I nosed it. And then I was like, no, I'm just Miss Jeff. I'm just overthinking. But the in comparison though, for me, the 15 is more creamy, just immediately creamier than the 14.
Mhm. Yeah, it's more of a like a chamomile tea than a black tea on the 15.
Well,
And
they're
it
both
doesn't
so
go as
good.
farmy.
Some smoked trout on the 14.1, Kevin says.
I can see that. Even like a little bit of like candied, candied or smoked trout.
It does go creamier. It's got more of like a white chocolate or cake fondant note on the 15 one for me.
I'm I'm not convinced these take water well. Like they seem to lose a bit of structure with the water in there.
Yeah, the smoke becomes more dominant on the finish.
I'll be interested to see how those turn out as we come back. So we're going to move on now to the 14.2 and 14.3, and I have
Sorry,
to,
14.2 and 15.2.
or yeah, 14.2 and 15.2, right? Thanks, Evan. What's
Don't make my
interesting
mistake.
here, I'm hoping I've got them. Yeah, I do have the right ones poured. The 14.2 is quite a bit darker than the 15.2.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, huge. It's almost like this one didn't touch anything other than bourbon.
And the nose on that 14.2 is like kind of screaming wine or sherry cask right off the bat. There's
Mm-hmm.
like a tarry, leathery note. Let me get these guys up on the screen. So here we
Does
go.
smell like an old Atari.
Like an tarry. All right. 14.2 is 57.7%. 128.9 ppm. And we should always remind people this is the ppm of the barley, not
Yeah.
in the spirit, whether it's after distillation or after maturation. There are a handful of producers like Waterford, sorry, not Waterford, like
Reynolds.
Waterford to do that, but Torveg that
Mhm.
references the peat in the bottle, which I think is interesting. So what have we got?
Glenallachie did that on the turbo, I think.
You're right.
Or
Mikel
Micotor.
Tor, yeah.
Micotor, yeah.
This is matured in first fill Oloroso hogsheads. That's 40%. First fill Amarone casks, 16%. Second fill Amarone casks, 44%. And produced from barley grown in 2017, 5 years of age. I always love the like who else would have a second fill Amarone cask other than
Yeah.
Bruichladdich? Uh, you know, the Amarone one is an interesting reference. We'll see how that makes out in the whiskey, but for comparative sake here, the 15.2 is 108.2 ppm, second fill X wine and X bourbon casks finished in first fill X cognac casks. So quite a different profile between these two. Maybe that's the Amarone we're getting right off the nose, like getting almost like this mix of like something like cooked raisins and blood.
Yep. Yeah, with a touch of mustard for me. I think the Amarone casks start coming out big time on this. It does kind of remind me of the Aaron Amarone cask finish.
I haven't tried that in a while, but Evan, what are your thoughts on the Aaron Amarone cask?
So it goes a little bit more leathery and spicy, but it's got this like big dried fruit note, and it does have this spiciness that comes out as well, from what I recall.
So, I mean, I can't think of many whiskeys where they have identified Amarone cask as the type of wine cask used. And the only reference point I have for it before that was Bruichladdich, or not Bruichladdich, but Murray McDavid, back when Murray McDavid and Bruichladdich were the same company. And they did two sister casks of 16-year-old Ardbeg, one of which they finished and, in my opinion, ruined in an Amarone cask. And then another one that was just straight bourbon. And to this day, it was like, I mean, it was so weird. And it was like this unusual color. Like it was definitely a wet fill Amarone cask.
Well, destroying something is a way of finishing it off. So
There you go. It all
yeah.
depends on the definitions.
There's on the 14.2, there's a really neat hit of blackberry jam for me on the palate.
It is quite jammy, a little bit of Turkish delight.
Hmm.
The 15.2 does have a bit more of a decadence and a bit more of a spiciness, which you'd expect from those cognac casks, which we know to be French oak. So they're going to have that nice ginger, cinnamon, kind of decadent spice tone to them. But I find the nose on these harder to penetrate than the first two, the
Yeah.
American oak ones.
The 15-2, I'm having a hard time with the 14-2, to be honest. It feels just very dry and overcooked and very tannin for me. So I'm gonna move on. Initially, my nose for the 15.2 was my mom's old bird cage with birds in it. I don't know. That's just what it was. It reminded me of these dove cages that she had. And forgot my other note. It was decent though. It was like a decent foodie note. It'll come back to me.
So this is what it smells like when doves cry?
Yes. Yes.
If you ever wanted to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife says that I make a face when I'm eating things that I have to eat, but that I don't like. I kind of feel like with both of these, I'm struggling with them. Like these are not my wheelhouse at all. Um, the 15-2 I like better, but like by degrees. I mean, I think both of these, the wine influence on them is just way too big.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's bizarre because the second, the 15-2 isn't really, it's a cognac cask, so it's not really a wine cask, but uh yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think I'm an Octomore guy who likes ex-bourbon Octomore.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to, especially on the peated side of things, I'm very much in a ex-bourbon kick, where I just, even sherry just doesn't seem that interesting to me a lot of the time, especially with peat. I don't mind the ex cognac one, the 15-2, but it's just not what I usually reach for.
Just like a hint of churros on the nose.
Mhm.
I'd eat a churro to mask the flavor of the 14-2.
Well, next time we do an Octomore tasting with the 15-2, I'll throw one
Dip,
in your kit.
dip it in
Yeah.
a little dulce de leche as well, just for added measure. I mean, am I totally off base on that? Is it my palate tonight? Because
We could be cooked. I don't
it,
know. I
it
added water.
like would Kurt suggest there's a sulfur kick on this?
No, he just wouldn't like it.
On the 14-2,
Yeah,
It's
I
like
think
just
you would get it.
it's
he
definitely
would make
winey,
it
but
up.
I think there's a faint trace of sulfur there as well.
I
I
was
don't know.
just going to say there's like, and I'm not going to say it's full on sulfured, but it's like when you just snuffed out a candle right now on the nose.
I don't know. I'm gonna add water because I don't feel like my opinion could be worse on the 14 anyway. The nose I find just very, it's not saying a lot to me. So
The 15-2's gone into lavender soap on the nose for me.
did you add water?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't mind the 15-2, but that might also be because I really don't like the 14-2. It's really spicy
Mm-hmm.
and more wood spice, but not really with the sweet tones that I would totally get. Um, it it just seems a little rough and ready for my taste. And I realize we are in the middle of tasting some of the most rough and ready single malts there are, but can't one have a little bit of finesse to go with like that whack of smoke and peat?
Yeah.
So uh, this is maybe a bit of a rant, but I feel like a lot of the time, and we don't really talk about it a ton, but it definitely happens. Wine casks and the like are usually used to make young whiskey interesting, where you can release something at a younger age, where it's going to add character to something that doesn't have the character of maturity, and it doesn't have time to develop the character from maturity either. And I just don't personally feel Octomore is lacking in character enough to need wine casks. In a lot of cases, I think ex-bourbon does it just fine. I guess you can't release a 0.1, 0.2, and 0.3 and all have them in ex-bourbon though, so you got to do something different.
Well, we're now 15 releases deep in Octomore. How long do they continue doing these? Like, do they at some point
Yep.
just release a core release of it?
Wait, they haven't done any chinkapin casks, so we have to
Oh,
find out what
oh,
that
don't
does.
trigger me, Harmony. It's my least favorite terminology in all of whiskey.
I know it is.
I don't know why. I just can't handle that word. It's just,
yeah.
Um,
and
yeah,
people say, I think it's partly because people like reps will say it as though like it's
it's
so exotic,
huge.
it's got to be a selling feature.
Yeah, no. I've explained to several people what it is based on the Cooper Industries
Mhm.
definitions and their understanding of it, and it's just the same thing. It's not different.
Mhm.
It's been used before. But anyway, I think this 14 is opening up nice with like leather and tobacco and dark black fruits,
It,
blackberries, that sort of thing.
it
Little
improves with
licorice.
water,
Yeah, little squid ink. Kelly might
but
like this one.
Yeah.
it's
Still
Yeah.
mustard on that one too, for me.
There's some
it's
mustard, yeah.
still not awesome, in my opinion.
For those who like it,
Mhm.
share your feelings.
But I mean, to each their own. Like, if everyone liked the same things, the world would be pretty boring. What's interesting with water is that Octomore 15.2 is going back a little bit closer towards the point ones, like that wine cask influence, not as big. It's starting to get a little fleshier and creamier. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's fair to say I've never been a huge fan of the point twos. Um, so I suppose I should be cautious. And I know there was at least one person who liked the point 14.2, and that's great. I mean, there's room for people to disagree and for people to like different things. Um, but yeah, that's not my favorite. And there was a question here. Who was it here? Dustin. No, it wasn't Dustin. It was before that. It was Will Christie that raises the question: why should there be a point one, point two, point three in the first place? And Will, you're forgetting there's also sometimes point fours,
Yes.
which only get released into duty free, except if COVID's taking place, and then they let us have some us plebs have some in North America.
Well, and I
Uh,
don't think it's 0.4, but there's been another release in the 15 series that's a 10-year-old.
oh, is there really?
The
Yeah.
new 10 just
I'm
launched at the distillery.
I am
Yeah.
going to have to hard press our Bruichladdich reps to rectify that situation.
Mhm.
So, I mean, where does this come from? I mean, the idea of those point one, point two, and point three is you can trace it all back to one guy. That's a Mark Renier idea. They've just kept it going. And I mean, to be fair, the guy had some good ideas. Some of the stuff they've done has definitely put Bruichladdich on the map and built it a lot of customer loyalty and street cred. Uh, whether the time has come to drop these releases, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, if it keeps working and they're selling, they'll probably keep going with this as long as they can. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, the point ones, you saw that in Waterford. Waterford releases were point ones, 1.1s, 1.2s, and then
Mhm.
went out of business shortly after the twos. Um, yeah, I
Interesting.
think it's an idea that maybe is worth revisiting at this point in time. I think like Port Charlotte and Bruichladdich, they should have a core release of Octomore, and then they should do limited releases to support that. I would love
Yep.
to see Octomore 10 again. I mean, those Octomore 10s that we had,
Mhm.
I don't think we've had one in 3 to 5 years. Those Octomore 10s were
Mhm.
great. A little
Yeah.
bit more maturity on them.
Yep.
But I think with Octomore, it's a whiskey that's always been drank at a younger age because it can be. And it's going to have that maximum impact of peat at a younger age. So I don't think we're going to see those go away anytime soon.
Yeah. Actually, I don't mind this. I'd rather have this than like Octomore committee releases, honestly.
Aren't like sassy Evan. We won't need
Yeah.
to point that. I mean, that's a fair point. Um, at least there's not some marketing gimmick behind this. This is
Mhm.
This is something tried and true that they've been doing for a while, but yeah. How long will the world continue to pay $300 and more for 5-year-old whiskey? I don't know.
I have heard that the Space Octomore noses and tastes remarkably different though. So
Oh, how much of it went into space?
yeah,
One
well, at
grain
least a
of
thimbleful.
barley.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's right.
Ben's tofu is a good one. I mean, it does remind you of like miso soup with little chunks of tofu in it. Both of them, both of them have that
Cool.
note. So Ben, that's a really good note. I like that one. I'm ready to move on to the 0.3s.
Yeah.
I still don't like that 14.2, but it's better with water than without.
Hmm.
And I don't say that very often.
So there's been a teeny tiny fly in my house for like 3 days, and I've been trying to catch it, and it just, goes across my face or in front of the TV, and it chose to die in this 14.3.
Oh, so
Finally got it.
I'm sure that those of you who love Octomore know that the 0.3s are probably in some places the most special. They are the Isla Barleys. And we're going to start with 14.3. Why this is kind of unique, and again, this is another Mark Grenier idea that other distilleries have also copied. I mean, Kilhoman grows barley on Isla as well. If you've ever been to Isla, you know that it's not a great place to grow barley. It's too wet. The growing conditions are extremely inconsistent. And yeah, it's then that's before you even factor in the barnacle geese, which can come in and decimate a crop. So if you're ever wondering why the 0.3s are so much more expensive, a big part of it is the barley's grown on Isla. It has to get shipped to the mainland where it's malted, I believe up near Inverness, and then brought back to the island to make whiskey from it. That is a big part of it. This particular release here, the 14.3 is 61.4%, first fill ex bourbon and refill wine casks, 214.2 ppm. And then we're going to look at the 15.3, which is blah, 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 5 years old, first fill ex bourbon and first fill Oloroso sherry hogsheads, specifically from Fernando de Castilla in Jerez, Spain. Bottled at 61.3%. And the ppm on this is one of the highest we've seen. It's not the highest, possibly the second highest, 307.2 ppm. Thoughts?
I like the nose on this 14.3. It's kind of like a salty coastline with like grilled salmon and flowers. Like it's in the spring, like it's very floral in the air. Yeah.
It's like you didn't have Tabasco or vodka to pour in your oyster, on your raw oyster, so you put some peanut butter on it.
Oh, cool. Steven says Windex on the nose. Very good.
Again, that's a great descriptor. I don't think it's wrong. It has that vinegar, kind of note to it. In fact, all I can think of now is like malt vinegar on French fries.
Mhm.
So we didn't really talk about it, but one of the things with that Isle of Barley being a poor place to grow barley, I think in some ways has parallels. And I think this is where Mark Grenier got some of his crazy ideas about terroir from, is that because it's a hard place to grow barley, you do have a very distinct barley profile that carries through in the spirit. I think because you've got, from my understanding, much higher protein levels, much lower levels of sugar and starch. So one of the other reasons this whiskey is more expensive to make is the sugar yields are really low. It's a very poor barley to make whiskey from, but some of the residual flavors, the impurities that carry through into it are what make it so interesting. And I think, I mean, without going too far down a rabbit hole, this is one of the reasons why I think people chase those Springbank local barleys. Campbellton,
Yeah.
like Isla, is not a great place to grow barley. You get very poor yields. The barley really struggles to survive. You have way out of whack from what the industry would consider normal protein and starch levels. But does it sometimes make an interesting profile whiskey? Absolutely.
It's kind of like how people talk about like old vine wines and stressing the grapes and the vines as you're in the growing season and stuff, to sort of make it work for every ounce of water that it gets. And that's where a lot of the character comes from. So maybe it's a similar fashion with the barley.
Well, I think, Evan, to add to your point there, like, and because we're talking like higher protein levels and less starch, these have much more like of a chalky minerality to them,
Mhm.
or even a gravelly minerality than any of the other Octomores we've been working on tonight. Like they're very distinct.
They're
There's
very different,
well,
even the two
yeah, very
styles.
different between the two for sure.
Yeah.
They both have a really nice sweetness that comes out on the palate though,
Mm-hmm.
along with
And
a bit of spice. But
what are the
it's
casks
what I
of
like
these?
about the 0.3s is that they usually have this big hit of flavor that
Mm.
I just don't see in the 0.1s a lot of the time.
So
No.
the 14.1 Harmony is first fill ex bourbon and refill wine casks. And
Okay.
then the 15.3 is first fill ex bourbon and first fill Oloroso sherry hogsheads from Fernando de Castilla.
Sorry. Okay, that's interesting. I could definitely taste the wine influence on the 14. But the 15 is so much creamier and tropical and sweet that I almost was like, is there wine in this at all? Or how does
On
it hit the
the
string?
14.1, there is a little bit of a peppery leather
Mhm.
tobacco tone, but I mean, to be honest, I don't think it comes across very wine cask. It's just there's
It's the
some
finish.
spices and tannins that you wouldn't get um just from ex bourbon. So I
Right.
the 15.3 I got to go back to. So Evan, what do you got on this, or either?
I don't. It's tough. Like I really like both of these, and this is where the stats like really play into the Octomore thing and how it's so intriguing, where you look at the ppm levels on both of them, and yes, it is malted barley before it's been steeped and distilled essentially, but it statistics wise it should be just like smoky beyond all comprehension, even compared to the other
Yeah.
Octomores that we've had, and yet there's still more going on in both of these than I get on the rest of the lineup.
So uh yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, the 14.3 especially, the peat on that is so restrained for what you'd expect it to be.
Hmm.
I think you start to see some of those darker phenols creeping through more in the 15.3. It
Mhm.
makes me think of like some German fetish licorice. Like, there's some salty, it's like something that you make the gimp eat before you put the leather face mask on or whatever.
Or
I assume
Sammy at
that the
Fruit
whip was
House.
made out of licorice at that point.
Maybe. Um, I, for the first time, I like, unlike the last set, I like the 14 better, I think, than the 15 because it's a bit more naked. I'm getting a bit more spirit. I find the combo of the super high phenols plus the sherry in the 15.3 makes it a little bit harder to pull it apart. It's very spice, leather, tobacco dominant. But I don't dislike it. All right, what about science? Have we applied science to these yet?
Yeah, I just did myself.
How much science are you applying, Evan?
2.3 bits of science.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Whoa,
Bits is the standard science unit,
that's
just so
right.
everybody knows.
I'm gonna have to go
The
blow my nose before the speed round. It's
the
all this
15,
smoke.
yeah, it's a lot of smoke. The 15.3 went way more salty and meaty with water for me.
The 14.3 goes into this moldy fruit note that I was getting off the hop. It's back again. Again, not in a bad way, but there's definitely this fruit plus this super integrated dirtiness to that fruit, like dirt-iness.
I don't know if you guys caught this in the chat, but we're now measuring how much science we're applying to our whiskeys. And we're measuring that in IUS, it seems. International Units of Science, which
Nice.
I think we can all agree that's perfect. We'll
That's
try to
official
remember to
then.
reuse that.
Yeah.
The 15.3 takes water remarkably well.
Yeah.
It is sweet. It's gone from German fetish licorice to just salted Dutch licorice, which I believe is a step down. It's a little bit less intense. But yeah, they're cool. I like both of them. I'll be interesting to see when we do the speed round, because I've always been back and forth between the 0.1s and the 0.3s.
Mhm.
So it'll be interesting to see how those match up tonight. But guys, if you're gonna buy me a moment, I am gonna go blow my nose to clear the phenols out before we go back
Sounds
to
good.
the unpeated ones.
Yeah. I used a neti pot full of Octomore before this, so my nose is just
Oh,
fine.
yeah, you're really clear.
Yeah.
And also the smoke is not going anywhere.
Yep. And going back to the 14.1 now, and the smoke is just gone. But there's also nothing else to it after doing the 15s right now.
Yeah.
The Kleenex was black. It's really weird.
Oh, it was Rechar Kleenex, it sounds like.
No. The Kleenex was white. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
All right. I really want to go back. I mean, I know this is kind of sacrilege because this is an Octomore tasting, effectively. But I'm really excited to go back to the first two because 18 years in predominantly bourbon casks is sort of my jam. So
The nose still shows off like wonderfully
Wow.
on the rest and bean.
it smells like a fancy spa on a hot sunny day. And
There is actually a little bit of a sweet tea note on there
they're
right now
bringing
too.
you healthy but tasty things to eat.
Sorry, we're back on the 18 because I feel like, what's the point?
The rest of
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, the
But-
nose is fantastic on that.
the nose is great.
Mhm.
Palate's lovely too. It's quite tangy. I think I am regretting adding water to it earlier. I think that it would probably be more to my liking now if I hadn't, but
Yeah.
it's got that charred pineapple thing going on, starting to go tropical. I love
I was gonna say with water, it's a little bit more like red eraser notes.
Mm.
That's all I can
Are they
say.
red or pink?
Pink, red.
Yeah.
It's
Long
not a
time
very
since I've had
flexible
those.
eraser. That's all.
It's to me the palate and the nose right now are like dragon fruit, kombucha, and still has a bit of that cheese note. But that like a peach sweet tea or an Arizona iced tea that you've just cracked the can open on.
I don't think either of those qualify as teas in Jeff
Yeah.
Surge's pantheon, but
No.
Mhm.
He's like, yeah, guys, like read a book. It's
Yeah.
not tea.
some poet in China didn't talk about it 700 years ago, so it's not tea.
It was secret
Yeah.
fetch tea, so it didn't get written up.
Yeah. Yeah, just because Arizona's company has only been around for 600 years, he just doesn't accept it.
So
Yeah.
what's interesting is
I
the
see his
nose
eye
on the
twitch.
Bruichladdich 18, I think, has really stepped it up a little bit over the course of the tasting.
It has.
stepped it up quite a bit. Very creamy, decadent, little bit of dulce de leche, maybe even a little bit of churro. Like it's got that fried kind of note to it.
Yeah. See, churro's gonna be a Bruichladdich like DNA note by the end of the year.
There's a
The
touch of
palate,
kiwi in there on the palate too.
the palate's good, but it is falling a little flat compared to that rest and bee. And chalky.
Oh, that's yummy. That's very nice.
All right, 14.1.
Shit.
What's
How many
crazy
babies
about-
do we get to pick at the end of this? Because I'm gonna have to edit down, I think.
Well, we'll get there. We'll figure it out.
I just gotta, so Watchman 999 says a tale of churro coming from up from Bill Lumsden. That's the next Glen Morangi. You heard it here first.
A tail of churro, that is
It's
brilliant.
ex tequila casks.
Jesus, that'd be so good.
Or as Sponge refers to him, Dr. Jillian Bumsden.
Yeah.
What's crazy when you nose these 0.1s now is where's the smoke? Where's the peat? It's barely even there. Like the nose is so desensitized to it now.
That's really nice.
Yeah, it's
though.
more like the remains of a fire than actual peat smoke right now.
Well, I think our noses have like Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
Palates, the smoke is there on the palate.
Hmm. Oh, the palate is nice. It's very
Man.
fruity.
Yeah, the 14.1 is more creamy, decadent, fruity. The 14.3 is
Oh,
like untamed.
15. So the
15-1.
15?
The
15
15-1,
sorry, the
yeah.
15.1 is completely untamed. It is like so rough and so raw.
It's like
The
horse
point ones offer the most citrus notes for me.
Yeah, it's definitely got like burnt to shit lemons on that 15.3.
The 15 one reminds me of like saddling horses with my cousins.
Mm-hmm.
And the
15.1
nose.
is more comforting and more welcoming than the 15.3. The 15.3 is like you've been put into a situation you weren't prepared for, and it's like there. You have no time to deal with it.
Am I going back to the 15.3? Because
I like
Yeah.
it
The
though.
point ones are interesting. That the 15-1, especially for me, it's like it's lemons that were burnt to shit, and they tried to get to Sharpie notes, but they just couldn't manage to hit Lecheg levels. It just didn't happen.
That was
Comment-
really good. So on my first pass, I picked the 15.1 as my favorite of the two. And now they're like tied a little bit because they've changed so
A
much.
little closer.
Yeah. This is
How are
hard.
the twos doing?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say that there's some interesting notes in the chat. Where was it here? Michael Ewan saying the price on the OB18 is very good. I like the new packaging too. I mean, it's a bold move moving to like, doesn't it have a glass stopper on it as well?
Yeah.
Which is not something you see in a lot of other whiskeys. You know, that's not going to fall apart after 20, 30 years in the bottle. And Will's comment here, are there any biologists that can confirm our taste senses work on a logarithmic scale like hearing and sight? I think we would consider that to be a question far too deep for a Kensington wine market tasting.
This isn't a TED Talk.
Not to say that it's not an interesting question.
I'm like, hey Siri, find me a doctor.
And then Kevin's
Well,
comment,
you've done
ask
it.
at Jeff PT. I mean, I think that's a fair rebuttal to the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're wondering where I am next week, Andrew, I'm at the university trying to find a scientist to help us with this question.
Yeah.
And the word you need to remember is logarithmic.
Yeah.
So,
I had to take a picture of the chat because there's no way I'll remember that.
that 14.2 is very barnyardy, and I don't think the stable boy has been doing his job.
Oh, that's because yeah, it is very
It's
dirty.
quite poopy.
Still a bit of mustard in there too.
But maybe he's making little poopy bricks for the fire because
Yeah.
they used all the peat on this whiskey.
The
Yeah.
15.2 is better, but I find it's kind of boring, especially after the
Mhm.
14s or 0.1s rather.
Yeah.
It's got a little bit of like mint and thyme that's coming through with the smoke, but
Yeah.
it's pretty tight on the palate still. A touch of like plaster on the nose right now too.
I'm already onto the 0.3s. I've already written off the 0.2s. I'm moving
But I
on.
think they're for sale, Andrew. Come on.
Yeah, they're stepping on the vote, man.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I could see that.
PC
The
Pomerol.
Pomerol cast makes
Yeah,
sense.
that was not tremendous. The
All
noses are
right.
more interesting on these 0.3s.
Mm.
But I also think my nose is ruined.
The nose is like you're digging up peat and you hit clay.
Burnt
Andrew, are you
bicycle.
getting any burnt bicycle tire tube on the 14.3?
I can't say that I've lit many of those on fire over the years, though. I suppose I've laid some tread marks. But I can see that it's got a little bit of that earthy, faintly rubbery note to it. It's just the peat when you get to this point, I think if it comes across as anything but smoke, it's just going to be really, really tarry. It's kind of hard to avoid.
Yeah.
And which way do you go between the 0.3s? I can't decide. I like the fact that they're so different.
Mhm.
I think I'm 15.3 because there's like a sweet Jolly Rancher type candy note in the middle, where the other one
Man,
is just very like leather, heavy, outdoorsy, salty,
Yeah.
peaty.
the smoke on that 15.3 goes on forever.
And it's
Um,
pretty.
the two of those have really evolved. Like they've changed quite a bit. I'd say they've probably changed more than any of the other Octomores in the lineup tonight. Um, they're interesting. Evan, you look like you're about to say something, or are you just trying to re-moisturize your palate?
No, I was actually going to say that the 15.3 and the Rest and Be Thankful Bruichladdich actually remind me of each other. You strip away the smoke and peat on that Octomore, and I think there's a lot of shared DNA there. It even has this like underlining like alpine fruity cheesy note coming through on the 15.3 right now on the finish for me. I think that's my winner. Could be just Tom. Just giving me bias here though.
Are we going to be referencing or asking questions about international units of science in the future?
Can we just create a tasting called that and just we'll send Tom a kit?
Well, I think we call that tasting. She blinded me with science.
Yeah.
And
Or just for science.
yeah,
For science.
go from
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Put little letters on it.
Well, Michael Ewan's comment here is a very valid one. Our perceptions of taste, smell,
Yep.
can all be affected by things like our mood, the weather, humidity. I mean, I've done virtual tastings for clubs in places that are more humid than Calgary, and I can tell just by looking at people's whiskeys that has affected the whiskeys more than they would here. Like they go hazy much faster. So yeah, it's a different
Where
night things could show differently.
yeah. Where did you find the big enough sauna to host a tasting in, man?
I don't know. Well, I mean, the Thorpes took some whiskeys to Vietnam on a cruise ship. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know if it gets much more humid than that. So
Yeah.
those must have been hazy AF, as the kids would say. pretty fast. Will, I see a new shirt in Andrew's future. It's not IUS if it's whiskey. Touche.
I love that. What size are you guys? We're going to Victoria this weekend. Should we
Well,
have
I can tell you I'm not a small extra large.
Yeah.
I'm like a
It's got to be a
European
North American
double
XL,
XL.
not a European
Um,
XL.
Yeah, like,
right?
and even then, well, anyway. Evan, poll. Should we do the polls? Where are we at here?
We're
Yeah,
poll
let's do
time.
that, and we'll do our lightning round. I guess
we've been
again, we
blinded
can
by
give our
three.
thoughts. Yeah. There we go.
All right. Well,
So,
everyone's got a chance to vote here.
Harmony, what are your two favorites? Or what are your favorites between the 18s, and what are your two favorites from the Octomores?
I kind of hate this tasting because I thought I knew my own thoughts and feelings about these whiskeys, and then we did them a second time, and I don't know. So, Bruichladdich, the Rest in B18. Since the minute I tried it, it was awesome. It's still awesome, so I'll stick with that for the Bruichladdich 18. My Octomores though have completely jumped around. I like the 15.3, and it's probably because, as you said, Evan, they're very similar to the Bruichladdich. So 15.3, and then I think 15.1 and 14.1. I think. But everything moved. So,
Yeah.
what about
Evan,
you?
how about you? Because I'm still trying to figure things out here.
It's hard.
So
This is
I'm gonna take the Rest in B, but I gotta say the Bruichladdich 18, as it's had time in glass, has gotten much. It's come up quite a bit for me. I quite like it. I still think the Rest in B is the more expressive. I do think the OB18 might be just a touch more complex, but you can't go wrong with either one. It's going to be the 0.3s for me. I did like the 0.1s, but the 0.3s just have so much more going on for me. So I'm going to take the 15.3 followed by the 14.3 personally.
Ooh.
Andrew?
I think I'm going to be writing a similar tune here. The Rest in B for me is the clear favorite of the two Bruichladdich. I think that Bruichladdich 18 shows really well. I do worry though that it's not going to be to everybody's taste. I don't think that's a mainstream whiskey because it's kind of funky, malty. I don't think that's what the average consumer is looking for. But it's cool. I mean, the price compared to the Rest in B, like, is it better value than the Rest in B? 100%. But I think the Rest in B is an illustration of how the best single casks can sometimes be better than the most well-made blend, or as Mark Grenier, who is relevant to this tasting, might call it cuvee, if you will. As far as the Octomores go, I didn't think it was going to go this way, but I think the 15.3 is my favorite. After the first round, I think the 14.3 was leading. But I love how that smoke is kind of ethereal, and not, the first time around it was very tarry and in your face, and the second time around it was like this really long, strong but elegant thread of smoke. And if I had to pick a favorite outside of those two, a third favorite Octomore, I would go 14.1, which is just that really clean profile. So
Yes, yeah.
those are mine.
Yeah, I've got a bit of 6.3 left. I think I might have to pour it after this just to revisit that one, because that was for a long time my favorite Octomore.
God, I was thinking I might need to go find something a little softer and more delicate to like soothe my palate back to level.
Well, the 6.3 is only 258 ppm, so I am stepping it down a little bit.
It's only. I was thinking of an old, like something old and refill cask just to mellow out. All right, are we ready to call an end to the poll here? Only 26 of 33 have voted. If you have not completed Evan's poll questions, we'll give you a final minute. We'd like to see a few more people answer on the poll here before we wrap up.
It's hard to actually see the poll on your monitor with all this smoke just wafting around.
I have a couple
Uh,
Octomores that I haven't opened yet that I should probably open someday.
Michael
Nice.
Ewan is reminding us that the Kensington Wine Market smoking jackets are an idea that still needs to be investigated further.
Still in
Um,
beta, not actually even alpha. It's far pre-release at this point.
oh,
Andrew, I think if you might be sold on the idea, if you know, like the leather elbow pad that you get stitched on, what if
I-
one was like embossed with your face and then the other one had Walter's?
no, no one's, literally
No.
no one wants that, myself included.
I think
Yeah.
if we do the elbow
Tartan.
patches, which I'm all for, it has to be a tartan of some sort.
It should.
Well,
Well,
I
the
think
jackets should be tartan.
to
Yeah.
continue with our brand ethos, rather than having a tweed jacket with leather elbow patches, we need to do as Homer Simpson did, put
Yeah.
tweed elbow patches on a leather jacket. I think that would be more in keeping with our style and our brand ethos.
That
Yeah, and
sounds
then we can
amazing.
put the KWM logo on the left breast, but then above that, instead of using like the polo Ralph Lauren, we do
Yeah.
make our elephant polo icon just above that.
Oh boy. Well, we'll see. Time will tell, but
I
we are
love
in
it.
need of, at some point here, our 35th anniversary is coming up. Maybe that's a good time, a good
Yeah.
point to aim for a Kensington Wine Market smoking jacket.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Even
35th
though
anniversary is tweed. That's the official
most of
stone,
us
isn't it?
don't smoke on a regular basis, any sort of
Just my whiskey.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. I think it's time we kill the poll here, Evan.
Kill
Sounds
it.
good.
We got up to 28, so that's pretty good. Do you want to take us
Okay,
through?
so yeah. So winner of the first round, and everything got votes, but it was a 20-8 win for the Rest and Be thankful 18-year-old Bruichladdich over the 18-year-old Bruichladdich OB. Both deserved votes, so I'm glad they both got it. First best Octomore of the night, 15-3 took it with 17 of the 28 votes. Second place was a 14-3. 15-2 got 0 votes. 14-2 and 15-1 got 1 vote. And the Octomore 14-1 only got 2. Crazy. So a lot of 0.3 lovers out there. Pardon me. The second best Octomore of the night, Octomore 14-1 takes it with 7 votes. 15.3 got 5. 14.3 got 6. Becomes the second favorite for everybody, I guess, at that point. But pretty good spread. For the third question, Bruichladdich, Port Charlotte, and Octomore better with or without a wide variety of casks. With wins it. The use of different sherry and wine casks for different releases gives their bottlings more nuance and variety. The withouts is got 5 votes. That's I'm a stick in the mud and prefer an ex-bourbon and refill cask. Casks to be used only. Thank you very much. And that was
I'm on side with whoever voted, the 5 people who voted for
yeah,
that.
that was purely put in there for me to vote, even though I don't get a vote. And 8 votes got can't we all just get along?
And it's
Yeah.
true, we can't.
God,
I mean,
why did we put that question in the answer in there? No, fight. I'm
Yeah.
just kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, that 15-3 landslide is got to be one of the biggest, like, one-sided votes for favorite I think we've ever seen.
Yeah.
But I would say the one telling point for me here is that the only 2 whiskeys I've completely finished
Are
are the
those two?
Bruichladdich 18s. So
Yeah.
Yeah, me
I-
too.
I
On
like
it.
the Octomores, but man, like, I don't know, like how often can you drink whiskeys like that? They're
That's
too
right.
big and kind of too rough and raw.
Well,
Yeah,
I
they're
agree with
definitely.
you.
Sorry, go ahead, Harmony.
I was gonna say I definitely agree with you, which is why I think some of my Octomores that I bought 15 years ago are still unopened because I don't need to. I have other slap in the face peated whiskeys that I'm trying to get through.
Yeah.
As much as I like them, they're just not your everyday go-to. However, I think if I had this Rest of Be 18 at home, it would not last very long.
Jeff's
Yeah.
question's a good one. Anyone ever polished off a bottle of Octomore in a night? And I would imagine
Oof.
that would mean you'd need a critical mass of people to achieve a
Mhm.
feat like that. Like
Yeah.
it's got to be 6 or more people. Like
Well, I think Octomore, it's not even the nightcap, it's just the nuclear option, like where like you can go through an entire Cold War without using a nuclear device, but you have to have the Octomore in hand just in case, is what it comes down to.
well, I think when you bring the Octomore out, there's an acknowledgement that the night's over because
That's
you're
right.
not going to taste anything with nuance or subtlety after that. Like it's a
Yeah.
point of no return.
Yeah. On the fallout the next day is just devastating.
Well, this was a fun lineup, guys. Thanks for doing it. Thoughts for our colleague Kurt, who's strumming his guitar at work, wishing he was a part of tonight's range because he's a huge Octomore guy, but not really. Anyway, thank you very much for taking part. This is no, I guess it's our third. We've done 3 virtual tastings already in January.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll see a bunch of you at the MS Whiskey Festival on Thursday. Lots of great things coming up over the next couple of months, so stay tuned on that. I hope you enjoyed this lineup. Was really impressed to see the interest in it because it's been a while since we've done an Octomore range, but this was a lot of fun. It was great to try them all side by side. So Harmony, Evan, thank you everybody for tuning in. Hope you all have a great night, and whether we see you in Calgary or Victoria, look forward to seeing a lot of you folks in the very near future. So
Thanks, Andrew. Bye, Evan.
hey, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Take care, guys.